You go back to God created a woman to be, they call it the helper for the man. And I know a lot of women kind of, that rubs them the wrong way. But then you have to go back to, and this is what I've gone back to, because when I first kind of thought of that and heard what culture says about that, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit too, just because I was listening to what they were saying. But if you go back to the first thing I said, that we're equal under God, God didn't say you're less than women. You're going to just help the man because he's better than you. He never said that. He said, you're both very good, and I created you to help him. So when we're in our perfect place, not less than, but helping if we're talking about marriage now, in a marriage situation, and the man is loving the wife as Christ loved the church. And now we could get into a lot there. But so that means self-sacrificial love. So he's protecting the wife, loving her like he would love his own body. Okay. So if he's actually doing that role and the woman's actually being the best help that she can be to that man, that's a powerful dynamic right there. And that is perfection. And really, that is what the man wants, and that is what the woman wants. Now, I know a lot of women will not like that either, but that's probably because we have poor examples.
Right. Or those women aren't in a marriage.
Or they're not in a marriage. But women, we do look for that strong person to lead us, whether we like to admit it or not. And let me go a little bit further in a darker alley here, but talking about the whole like sex trade and all that kind of stuff, you have all of you have this lure of women wanting to feel powerful with having men want them. And that's because of that need to have a man over them who loves them and does want them, but in a very loving and protective relationship, where they do lead, but they don't dominate. They don't abuse, but they are a leader. And so we've taken things that God intended and we've twisted it, and we've twisted everything. So now it's all mixed up and it's confusing, and it's hard for us to figure out, what does a strong woman look like? And
where do you think a lot of that confusion really stems from now, today? Not going back to the past and kind of seeing some of the talking points that are very antithetical to some of the points that you have already made. Not going back to the 60s and 70s where there really was a push, well, even going back to after World War II, so the 50s, there was this transformation that happened that I think was a positive transformation in women having to be in the workforce because all the men were overseas fighting World War II, and women became nurses, they became factory workers, they became a lot of these more professional positions. And that was fantastic that took place and kind of got us over the hump of making equal opportunity for women to be in those fields.
Right.
Then out of that kind of stemmed the 60s and 70s that sort of pushed for this, anything you can do, we can do better. Sort of notion. And it still exists today. I don't want to, if this is not what you think really this confusion stems from, tell me, but I just see a lot of that philosophy, and it is a philosophy that women not only are equal to men, but that they are better than men in many regards. And we've kind of even tried to, in many ways, eliminate men's, not roles, but eliminate men's attributes from certain things in society.
And their roles.
But eliminate men's abilities in certain ways that just naturally make them better at certain things than women. In order to say women are equal, we have to make sure that they are equally competing, equally able to do the same exact tasks that all men can do.
Right.
Do you think that's where a lot of the confusion has come in, where or does it stem from somewhere else?
I mean, I'm sure it stems from a lot more than what I can see, but from what comes to mind as you're talking is, first, I think we have trouble, all of us, men and women, with authority.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
So, I mean, I'm going to forget the other thing that I was thinking, but I'll just go into that real quick. So men with a Christian worldview, I guess you would say, men are under God, or so are women, but women are supposed, in the marriage kind of situation, we're supposed to be under the authority of the husband.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's not like a abusive thing. That's just, we're under that person. They lead. You can't have two leaders because you will go in two different directions.
Right.
So you have to have one, like any business or whatever. You have people that are in charge at varying degrees. So the man is supposed to be in charge. And so I think the women have, just because, going back a little bit in the past, because of past abuses of that, we don't like that at all. I think it's just a tendency to not want authority. And so we're kind of just opposed to that.
Yeah.
And so we reject it with total,
I think that's
passion.
Well, yeah. And I think it's the totality of the rejection of those types of roles that have been around for centuries, millennia, that, men were there to lead. And there is 100% abuse on the part of the males in that role.
Yeah.
And it's hard to come to grips. Can this role still exist in the capacity that it had done if abuse existed within that same capacity?
Yeah.
And I understand the rejection.
Yeah.
I definitely understand the rejection of it. Is that a reason to throw the entirety of that role, out with the bathwater?
Right.
That type of thing where now we can't even, now it's so almost taboo. Like all the stuff that you're saying right now, I'm so glad you're saying it. and that's why I want you to talk more in this conversation, because if it was coming from me, I would look like a patriarchal, crazy person.
Yeah.
Even though, like you mentioned before, in context. So if we go back to the beginning of the Word of God, man and woman were created in the image of God, the divine. God and his Trinity said, let us make man in our own image, male and female, we created them.
So that's pretty awesome.
Equal playing field from that place. And then you go to the other verse that you mentioned, which was, women, yes, are supposed to be under the authority of their husbands. And this really is a marriage focused context, but the men are then to love their wives, like you said, as Christ loved the church. So we're supposed to love our wives and Christ's church is his body, the group of people that make up Christianity as a whole. We're supposed to love our wives in that same way.
So that's a really high standard.
Jesus died.
Yeah.
Jesus gave his life for the church, what would become the church. So we are, as men, supposed to have this self-sacrificial love, this laying down of yourself, kind of what we talked about in the past with marriage. This 100% of yourself is for that person. I'm going to give all of me to you.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And I do think, because I've seen it in our marriage, that that's what you want. And it's hard because people are like, oh, you can't speak for all women. You can't speak for all women. Okay. All we can do is give, anecdotal evidence of successful relationships.
Right.
And that's all we're really doing in this podcast, is just looking at what's been done in the past that has been successful, looking at what's been done in our personal lives that has been successful, and trying to get that truth out to everybody that's listening and watching this. What's up, everybody? You just watched a clip from one of our Just Breathing podcasts. If you want to see the full version, you just hit the link in the description below. Or if you want to just keep watching clips, we got some more right here. Thanks, everybody.